Queen Velera sat alone in her throne room when the message arrived. The walls around her were made of black crystal that had been mined from the deepest caves of her home world. Light from three distant suns came through the tall windows and made the crystals shine like stars. She had ruled the Keith Empire for 200 years from this room. She had seen wars begin and end. She had watched planets burn and new ones be born. Nothing had ever surprised her, until now. The messenger was afraid to speak. He was a young officer with bright green scales and trembling hands. He held a data tablet like it was a bomb that might explode at any moment. "Speak," the queen commanded. Her voice was cold and sharp like winter wind. "Your Majesty," the officer said. His voice cracked. "We have received news from the outer regions. It concerns Princess Yuna." The queen's golden eyes narrowed. Yuna was her youngest daughter. She was also her greatest disappointment. Not because Yuna was stupid or cruel or weak. No, Yuna was smart and kind and brave. But she had been born wrong. Among the Keth people, the color of one's scales meant everything. The royal family had deep purple scales that shone like precious gems. Noble families had scales of blue or green or silver. Common people had scales of brown or gray. And those born with pale or faded scales were considered defective. They were genetic failures. They were unwanted. Princess Yuna had been born with pale violet scales. They were almost white in certain light. The doctors had examined her 1,000 times. They said her mind was perfect. Her body was healthy, but her scales marked her as less than perfect. And among the Keth, perfection was everything. "What has my daughter done now?" the queen asked. She expected to hear that Yuna had gotten into another argument with her tutors. Or perhaps she had tried to run away again. The girl had always been difficult. The officer swallowed hard. "Princess Yuna has married, Your Majesty." For a moment, the queen felt hope rise in her chest. Perhaps one of the noble houses had finally accepted her daughter. Perhaps Yuna's sharp mind and gentle heart had won someone over, despite her scales. "Who is the husband? Which house?" "He is not from any house, Your Majesty." The officer's voice became very small. "He is not Keth at all. He is human." The queen did not move. She did not speak. The silence in the throne room became so heavy that the officer thought he might die from it. "Human," the queen finally said. The word came out like poison. Humans were known throughout the galaxy, but not for good reasons. They came from a small blue planet in an unimportant part of space. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel a few hundred years ago. They had no special abilities. They were not particularly strong or fast or smart. They could not breathe underwater like the Neth. They could not see in the dark like the Vorn. They could not live for thousands of years like the Keth. Humans were ordinary. They were unremarkable. They were, in the eyes of most galactic species, barely worth noticing. And now one of them had married a princess of the Keth Empire. "Tell me everything," the queen commanded. The officer explained what had happened. 3 cycles ago, Princess Yuna had been traveling to visit Haran on a distant colony. Her transport ship had been attacked by pirates. The escort vessels fought them off, but Yuna's ship was badly damaged. The closest safe port was a human research station called Horizon 7. Yuna was supposed to stay there for only a few days while her ship was repaired, but she did not leave. She sent messages saying she was happy. She said she had found friends among the humans. She said she felt free for the first time in her life. The queen had thought it was a phase. Young people sometimes rebelled against their families. It was normal. She had expected Yuna to grow bored and come home. Instead, Yuna had sent a new message. She had married a human man named Park Do-hyun in a small ceremony on the station. She said she loved him. She said she was happy. She said she was never coming back. "Who is this human?" the queen asked. "Is he a leader? A warrior? A scientist?" The officer checked his tablet. "He is a maintenance engineer, Your Majesty. He fixes machines on the station." The queen closed her eyes. Her daughter, a princess of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, had married a repairman. Not even a famous repairman. Just an ordinary man who fixed broken things. "This cannot stand," the queen said. "This marriage must be ended." She called her advisors to the throne room. They came quickly, their scales gleaming in the crystal light. There was Admiral Torek, who commanded her fleets. There was Lady Sereth, who managed diplomatic relations with other species. There was Old Minister Carvin, who knew every law that had ever been written. "We must bring the princess home," Lady Sarah said. "If the other empires learn that a Keth royal married a human, we will become a joke. Our enemies will use this against us." "The law is clear," Minister Carvin added. "A royal marriage requires the blessing of the ruling monarch. Since the queen did not give blessing, the marriage is not valid under Keth law." "Then we will go to this station and retrieve my daughter," the queen decided. "We will bring her home and pretend this never happened. The human can go back to fixing his machines." But even as she gave the order, Queen Valira felt something strange in her heart. She remembered Yuna as a baby, crying in the night. She remembered the doctors shaking their heads at her pale scales. She remembered the suitors who came to see Yuna and then left without making offers. 12 noble houses had rejected her daughter. 12 families had looked at Yuna and decided she was not good enough. The girl had spent her whole life being told she was defective. She had spent her whole life being unwanted. And now, somewhere on a small human station at the edge of known space, someone had wanted her. Someone had looked at Yuna and seen something worth loving. Someone had chosen her. The queen pushed these thoughts away. It did not matter what the human felt. He was nobody. He was nothing. Her daughter deserved better than a life with a species that most of the galaxy considered primitive. She would go to this station herself. She would look this human in the eye and show him what a real Keth queen was like. She would take her daughter home, and everything would go back to normal. But deep in her heart, Queen Valera knew that nothing would ever be normal again. Park Do-yun had never thought of himself as special. He was born in a small fishing village on the southern coast of Korea. His parents died when he was young, and his grandmother raised him. She taught him how to fix things. She taught him that broken things could be made whole again. She taught him that patience and kindness were more valuable than gold. When he was old enough, Do-hyun left Earth to work on space stations. He was good with machines. He understood how things worked. He could look at a broken air recycler or a damaged hull panel and know exactly what was wrong. The stations needed people like him, people who could keep everything running. He never wanted to be famous. He never wanted to be rich. He just wanted to do his job well and maybe find some happiness along the way. Happiness found him on Station Horizon 7. Do-hyun remembered the day Yuna arrived. He was working in Section C, replacing a faulty water filter. The station's speaker system announced that a damaged Keth transport was docking for emergency repairs. People started whispering. The Keth were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They rarely visited human stations. When the passengers came out of the transport, everyone stared. There were several Keth guards with deep blue scales and weapons at their sides. Behind them walked a young woman. She was not like the others. Her scales were pale, almost white, with just a hint of violet. She was beautiful in a strange, delicate way. But what Do-hyun noticed most was her eyes. They were golden like the sun, and they were full of sadness. The other people on the station whispered as she passed. Do-hyun heard them say things like, defective and wrong, and look at her scales. The young woman heard them too. He saw her shoulders fall. He saw her try to make herself smaller, as if she wanted to disappear. Something in Do-hyun's heart broke a little. He went back to his work, but he could not stop thinking about those sad golden eyes. The next day he saw her again. She was sitting alone in the station's common area. The other travelers, both human and alien, kept their distance from her. She had a cup of something in her hands, but she was not drinking it. She was just staring at the stars through the big observation window. Do-hyun did not know why he walked over to her. He was not a brave man. He did not like talking to strangers. But something pulled him toward her. "That seat taken?" he asked, pointing to the chair across from her. She looked up at him with surprise. Nobody had spoken to her since she arrived. "No," she said softly. "Please, sit." Do-hyun sat down. He noticed that her cup was filled with a black liquid that smelled bitter. "That doesn't look very good," he said. "It is called Keth root tea," she replied. "It is traditional for my people. But you are right. It tastes terrible." Do-hyun smiled. "Would you like to try something else? We have this drink on Earth called hot chocolate. It is sweet and warm. I think you might like it." The woman studied him with her golden eyes. "You do not seem afraid of me." "Should I be?" "My scales," she said, looking down at her pale hands. "Among my people, they mark me as defective. Most species find them disturbing." Doyun looked at her scales. They caught the light and sparkled like fresh snow. "I think they are beautiful," he said honestly. "They remind me of winter mornings on Earth, when everything is covered in frost and the world looks brand new." The woman stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. It was a small smile, careful and uncertain, like a flower opening for the first time. "I am Yuna," she said. "I am Doyun. Now let me get you that hot chocolate." That was how it started. Over the next few weeks, Yuna's ship remained in the repair bay. There had been more damage than expected, and parts needed to be ordered from distant systems. Yuna could have stayed in her quarters, waited in silence until she could leave, but instead she began spending time with Dohyun. He showed her around the station. He introduced her to human food. The first time she tried kimchi, her face turned blue and she drank 3 glasses of water. But she laughed while doing it, and Do-hyun thought it was the most wonderful sound he had ever heard. She was curious about everything. She asked about Earth, about his village, about his grandmother. He told her stories about fishing boats and stormy seas and the smell of salt in the air. She listened with her full attention, as if his simple life was the most interesting thing in the universe. In return, she told him about the Keth Empire. She told him about the pressure of being royal, about the expectations she could never meet. She told him about the suitors who came to see her and then left with disgust on their faces. She told him that she had spent her whole life feeling like she was not good enough. "That is stupid," Do-hyun said one evening. They were sitting in his small quarters, eating noodles from paper cups. "You are smart and kind and funny. Anyone who cannot see that is blind." Yuna looked at him with wonder. "You really believe that?" "I really do." She put down her noodles. She leaned forward, and she kissed him. Doyun had been kissed before, but never like this. It felt like flying. It felt like coming home. It felt like everything in his life had been leading to this moment. When they pulled apart, Yuna's pale scales had turned pink. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "I should not have done that. You probably do not want—" "Yuna," Doyun interrupted, "I have wanted to do that since the first day I saw you." Her eyes went wide. "Truly? Truly?" After that, they were together every day. They talked for hours. They watched the stars. They laughed at nothing and everything. Doyun had never been so happy in his entire life. When her ship was finally repaired, Yuna did not leave. She sent a message to her family saying she had decided to stay on the station for a while longer. She found work in the station's library, organizing data files and helping researchers. Nobody on the station cared about her scales anymore. They saw her kindness. They saw her intelligence. They saw the way she smiled at the maintenance engineer who had fixed more than just machines. 3 months later, Yuna asked Do-hyun a question. "Among the Keth," she said, "when a woman wishes to join her life with a man, she asks him directly. She offers him her heart and her future. If he accepts, they are married." She took a deep breath. "Park Do-hyun, I offer you my heart. Will you accept it?" Do-hyun did not hesitate. "Yes," he said. 1,000 times yes." They were married the next day in the station's small garden, surrounded by flowers from a dozen different planets. Admiral Shin performed the ceremony. The whole station came to watch. It was the happiest day of Do-hyun's life. He did not know that across the galaxy, a queen was preparing her warship. He did not know that his happiness was about to be challenged in ways he could not imagine. But even if he had known, he would not have changed a thing. Because Yuna was worth any challenge. She was worth everything. The warning came at dawn. Station Horizon 7 did not have real days or nights, but the humans who lived there kept Earth time because it felt natural. At exactly 6 in the morning, the alarms began to sound. Admiral Shin Yunji was in her office when the call came. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had commanded this station for 15 years. She had dealt with pirates, smugglers, and difficult diplomats. Nothing scared her anymore. "Admiral," her communications officer said over the speaker, "a Keth warship has entered our sector. They are requesting permission to dock." Shin sat up straight in her chair. A warship was not a casual visitor. What class? Imperial class, Admiral. It is one of their largest ships. And, the officer paused. They are displaying the royal banner. Shin closed her eyes for a moment. She had heard about the wedding. Everyone on the station had. Park Do-yun was well-liked among the crew. His Keth wife was kind and gentle. They seemed happy together, but Shin had known this day would come. You could not marry a princess without consequences. Grant them permission to dock at Bay 7, she said, but inform them that only the primary party may come aboard. No armed escorts inside the station. Admiral, they might not accept those terms. Then they can turn around and go home. Shin stood up and straightened her uniform. This is a human station. We follow human rules here. The Keth warship was enormous. It filled the view screens like a mountain of black metal and glowing lights. It could have destroyed Station Horizon 7 with a single shot, but it did not fire. Instead, it slowly moved toward the docking bay and connected with a gentle click. Admiral Shin waited at the docking bay with a small honor guard. She was not going to bow or scrape before any alien queen, but she would be respectful. That was the human way. The door opened. Cold air rushed out, carrying a strange scent like metal and flowers. Then Queen Valera stepped through. She was tall, much taller than any human. Her scales were deep purple, so dark they almost looked black. Her golden eyes swept across the humans like they were insects. She wore a gown of silver fabric that flowed behind her like water. On her head sat a crown of black crystal that caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions. She was terrifying. She was beautiful. She was every inch a queen. I am Valera, ruler of the Keth Empire, she announced. Her voice filled the docking bay without effort. I have come for my daughter. Admiral Shin stepped forward. Your Majesty, welcome to Station Horizon 7. I am Admiral Shin Yunji, commander of this station. Your daughter is here and safe. I know she is here. The Queen's eyes narrowed. I also know that she has made a foolish mistake. I am here to correct it. With respect, Your Majesty, marriage is not a mistake that can be corrected. It is a choice made by two adults. The Queen looked at Admiral Shin the way one might look at a talking animal. Interesting, but not important. Bring me to my daughter. They walked through the station's corridors. The Queen's long gown swept the floor behind her. Humans stopped and stared as she passed. Some of them bowed. Some of them just watched with wide eyes. The Queen ignored them all. Yuna was waiting in the station's meeting room. Do-yun stood beside her, holding her hand. He was wearing his cleanest uniform, the one he usually saved for special occasions. His face was calm, but Yuna could feel his hand trembling slightly. It will be okay, she whispered to him. I know, he whispered back. I am not afraid. The door opened and Queen Valera walked in. When she saw her daughter, her expression did not change. When she saw the human holding her daughter's hand, something cold and hard entered her eyes. Yuna, the Queen said, you will come home with me now. This foolishness has gone on long enough. Yuna lifted her chin. No, Mother, I am staying here. You have no choice. You are a princess of the Keth Empire. You have duties and responsibilities. You cannot throw everything away for... She looked at Do-hyun with disgust. This has a name, Yuna said, her voice growing stronger. His name is Park Do-hyun. He is my husband. And I love him. The Queen made a sound of disgust. Love. You sound like a child reading fairy tales. Love is weakness. Love is for species too primitive to understand the importance of duty and bloodline. Do-hyun spoke for the first time. Your Majesty, I understand that I am not what you wanted for your daughter. I have no titles. I have no wealth. I am just an ordinary man. But I love Yuna with all my heart. I will spend every day of my life trying to make her happy. The Queen turned her golden eyes on him. The weight of her gaze was almost physical. And what can you offer her, human? What can you give her that the Keth Empire cannot? I can give her a home where she is not judged by the color of her scales, Do-hyun said quietly. I can give her a place where she is loved for who she is, not what she was born to be. I can give her laughter and warmth and someone who will stand beside her no matter what. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was not a kind laugh. You speak well for a primitive, but words are cheap. Actions are what matter. She turned back to Yuna. Daughter, I am giving you one chance. Come home with me now. We will forget this ever happened. You can still have a proper life, a proper marriage, a proper future. A proper life where I am hidden away because my scales embarrass you? Yuna asked. A proper marriage to someone who finds me defective? A proper future where I spend every day pretending to be something I am not? She shook her head. No, mother. For the first time in my life, I have found a place where I belong. I have found someone who loves me. I am not leaving. The queen's face hardened. Then you leave me no choice. I will not allow this marriage to stand. If you will not come willingly, I will find another way. She turned and walked toward the door. But before she left, she looked back at Do-hyun one more time. You think you have won, human? You think you have taken my daughter from me? But you do not understand what you have started. The Keth do not forgive. We do not forget. And we do not lose. The door closed behind her. Yuna let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Her whole body was shaking. Do-hyun put his arms around her and held her close. What will she do? He asked. I do not know, Yuna admitted. But my mother always has a plan. Whatever she does next, it will not be good. Admiral Shin entered the room a moment later. Her face was serious. The Queen has requested a formal meeting with me. She mentioned something about ancient laws and trials. She looked at Do-hyun. I think she is going to challenge your marriage through legal means. What does that mean? Do-hyun asked. It means, Yuna said, her voice heavy with worry, that things are about to get much more difficult. Outside the window, the Queen's warship hung in the darkness like a waiting predator. The battle for Yuna had just begun. The meeting took place in the station's largest conference room. Admiral Shin sat at one end of the table. Queen Valera sat at the other. Between them were Yuna, Do-hyun, and several advisors from both sides. The Queen had spent the night consulting with her Minister of Law. She had found what she was looking for. Now she smiled like a hunter who had cornered her prey. There is an ancient law among my people, she began. It is called the trial of worthiness. In the old days, when a man wished to marry a woman of higher status, he had to prove that he deserved her. He had to pass 3 challenges to show that he was strong enough, smart enough, and valuable enough. Admiral Shin frowned. That law is thousands of years old. Surely it is no longer used. The law was never removed, the Queen replied smoothly. It remains part of our legal code. And since my daughter married without my blessing, I have the right to invoke it. Yuna's face went pale. Mother, no. The trials were designed for Keth warriors. Humans are not what? The Queen raised an eyebrow. Not strong enough? Not smart enough? That is exactly the point, daughter. If this human cannot pass the trials, then he has no business being married to a princess. Do-hyun had been quiet, listening carefully. Now he spoke. What happens if I take these trials and pass? The Queen's smile flickered slightly. She had not expected him to ask about passing. If you pass all 3 challenges, your marriage will be officially recognized by Keth law. I will have no further grounds to object. And if I fail, then your marriage is invalid. Yuna returns home with me, and you, she paused, you go back to your machines. The room was silent. Admiral Shin looked at Do-hyun with concern. You do not have to do this. The Keth have no legal authority over human citizens. You could refuse. If I refuse, Do-hyun said slowly, then the marriage remains contested. The Queen could make things difficult for Yuna, for this station, for everyone. He looked at his wife. And Yuna would always have to wonder if I was truly willing to fight for her. Yuna grabbed his hand. Do-hyun, you do not have to prove anything to me. I know you love me. I know you do. He squeezed her hand gently. But I want to prove it to everyone else too. He turned to face the Queen. I accept your challenge. Something like surprise crossed the Queen's face. She had expected the human to refuse. She had expected fear and weakness. Instead, she saw something else in his eyes, something that made her uneasy. Very well, she said. The trials will begin tomorrow. There will be 3 challenges. The first is a test of combat. The second is a test of mind. The third, she paused, the third will remain secret until the moment of testing. That seems unfair, Admiral Shin objected. It is traditional, the Queen replied. The third trial tests a person's true character. It must come as a surprise. After the meeting ended, Do-yun and Yuna walked back to their quarters in silence. The corridors of the station seemed longer than usual. The lights seemed dimmer. You should not have accepted, Yuna finally said. Her voice was thick with emotion. The trials are designed for Keth warriors. My people are stronger than humans. They are faster. They train their whole lives for combat. I know, Do-yun said. You could die in the first challenge. I know, Yuna stopped walking. She turned to face him, her golden eyes bright with tears. Then why? Why would you risk your life like this? Do-yun reached out and wiped a tear from her cheek. My grandmother used to tell me a story. She said that when she was young, a terrible storm hit our village. The waves were higher than houses. Everyone ran to the hills to escape. But my grandmother stayed behind because my grandfather was sick and could not walk. She stayed with him through the whole storm, holding his hand, telling him that everything would be okay. What happened? Yuna asked softly. The storm passed. They survived. And when people asked my grandmother why she stayed, she said something I have never forgotten. She said that love is not something you feel, it is something you do. Real love means staying when everyone else runs away. It means fighting when everyone else gives up. Do-yun took Yuna's hands in his. I am not staying because I think I can win. I am staying because you are worth fighting for. Even if I lose, even if I fail, at least you will know that I tried. At least the whole galaxy will know that a simple human loved a Keth princess enough to face impossible odds for her. Yuna threw her arms around him. She held him tight, as if she could protect him from what was coming. I do not want to lose you, she whispered. You will not, he promised. I have no intention of dying. I have far too much to live for. That night, Do-hyun could not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the challenges ahead. He was not a warrior. He was not a genius. He was just a man who fixed broken things. But his grandmother had taught him something else too. She had taught him that the mountain does not move for the wind, but water, given time, can carve through stone. The strong break, the flexible survive. He would not try to beat the Keth at their own game. He would find another way. Admiral Shin came to see him early the next morning. She looked worried. I have been researching the trial of worthiness, she said. In the entire history of the Keth, no non-Keth has ever passed all three challenges. Many have died trying. That is encouraging, Do-hyun said dryly. I am serious. Shin sat down across from him. The first challenge is combat against a Keth champion. Their best warriors can move faster than the human eye can follow. The second challenge is a strategic simulation that even Keth admirals find difficult. And the third challenge is unknown. Then I will have to be creative, Do-hyun said. Shin studied him for a long moment. You really love her, do you not? More than anything. The admiral nodded slowly. Then I will help you however I can. This station is human territory. We will make sure the trials are fair. And Do-hyun, she leaned forward. Remember that humans have survived this long, not by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being stubborn. We survived by refusing to quit. That is your greatest weapon. Do-hyun smiled slightly. My grandmother would have liked you. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. Do-hyun stood up and looked out the window at the Queen's warship. Tomorrow I face their champion in combat. The Queen expects me to fail. She expects me to be afraid. Are you afraid? Do-hyun thought about Yuna's smile. He thought about the way she laughed when she tried new foods. He thought about the future they could have together if he won. No, he said. I am not afraid. I am ready. The combat arena had been set up in the station's cargo bay. It was the largest open space available. Hundreds of people gathered around the edges to watch. Humans, Keth, and other species all stood together, waiting to see what would happen. Queen Valira sat on a raised platform, her silver gown flowing around her like liquid metal. Yuna stood nearby, her pale scales almost glowing in the harsh lights. Her hands were clasped together so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. The Queen's champion walked into the arena first. His name was Commander Tarek. He was the finest warrior in the entire Keth fleet. His scales were dark blue, almost black, and covered with old scars from countless battles. He was tall and muscular, with arms as thick as tree trunks. He moved with the easy grace of a predator who had never known defeat. Do-hyun walked in from the other side. He wore simple work clothes. He had no armor. He carried no weapons. Next to the massive Keth warrior, he looked like a child. Whispers ran through the crowd. Many of them thought this would be over in seconds. "The rules of combat are simple," the Queen announced. "Fight until one opponent cannot continue. No weapons are allowed. Victory goes to the last one standing." Tarek smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Do not worry, little human. I will try to make this quick." Do-hyun did not answer. He was looking around the arena, studying the walls, the floor, the ceiling. He noticed that the cargo bay had its own gravity controls, separate from the rest of the station. He noticed the metal beams that crossed the ceiling. He noticed the handholds on the walls that workers used when loading cargo in zero gravity. The signal sounded. The fight began. Tarek charged forward like a thunderbolt. He was fast, faster than anything Do-hyun had ever seen. A normal man would have been crushed in an instant. But Do-hyun was not standing still. The moment the signal sounded, he had run toward the nearest wall. He grabbed a handhold and pulled himself up, just as Tarek's fist crashed into the space where he had been standing. The crowd gasped. Tarek turned and charged again. Do-hyun scrambled along the wall like a spider, using the handholds to swing himself out of reach. Years of working in maintenance shafts and zero-G environments had given him an unusual kind of agility. He knew how to move in 3 dimensions. He knew how to use every surface as a path. "Stand still and fight," Tarek roared. "No, thank you," Do-hyun called back. The chase continued. Tarek tried to grab Do-hyun, but the human was always just out of reach. He swung from beams, bounced off walls, and ducked through narrow spaces that the larger Keth could not follow. The crowd began to murmur. This was not how Keth combat worked. This was something else entirely. Do-hyun was waiting for an opportunity. He found it when Tarek, frustrated and angry, charged at him with full force. Do-hyun waited until the last possible moment. Then he hit the emergency gravity control on the wall beside him. The gravity in the arena suddenly reversed. Everything flew upward. Tarek, caught mid-charge, was thrown toward the ceiling with tremendous force. He had no experience fighting and changing gravity. He could not adjust. His head slammed into a metal beam with a sickening crack. Do-hyun had been ready. He held onto his handhold with both arms, weathering the change. When the gravity returned to normal, he let himself drop gently to the floor. Tarek fell like a stone. He hit the ground and did not move. Silence filled the arena. Then slowly, the humans in the crowd began to cheer. Queen Valera's face was as cold as ice. This was not what she had expected. This was not honorable combat. This was something strange and uncomfortable. "The human wins the first challenge," she announced, her voice tight with displeasure. "We will proceed to the second trial." The second trial took place in the station's computer center. A complex strategic simulation was loaded into the main screen. It was a game of fleet warfare, designed to test the minds of Keth military leaders. The player had to manage resources, predict enemy movements, and make decisions under pressure. "This simulation has been used to train Keth admirals for 300 years, the Queen explained. "Most candidates fail within the first hour. To pass, you must survive for at least 4 hours or achieve victory." Do-hyun sat down at the control panel. The simulation began. At first, things went badly. The computer controlled an enemy fleet that was larger and more powerful than his own. It attacked from multiple directions at once. Do-hyun lost ships quickly. Within 30 minutes, he had lost half his forces. The Queen smiled slightly. This was more like what she had expected. But Do-hyun did not give up. He started doing strange things. He retreated when he should have attacked. He sent ships on missions that seemed to have no purpose. He made trades that appeared to waste resources. The Keth observers shook their heads. The human clearly did not understand the game. But hour after hour passed, and Do-hyun was still playing. He was not winning, but he was not losing either. Every time the computer tried to finish him off, he found a way to escape. Every time it seemed like he was cornered, he slipped away. 4 hours came and went, then 5 hours, then six. Finally, at 6 hours and 23 minutes, the game ended in a draw. Neither side had won. Neither side had lost. A stalemate, the judge announced. By the ancient rules, a stalemate after 4 hours counts as a pass. The queen's hands gripped her throne so hard that the metal bent slightly. How? She demanded. How did you do that? Do-Yun stretched his tired shoulders. I did not try to win, he explained. I realized early that I could not beat the computer in a straight fight. It was faster and smarter than me. So instead I focused on not losing. I made myself too annoying, too unpredictable, too difficult to finish off. Eventually the simulation ran out of time. That is not how the game is supposed to be played. You did not say how I had to play, Do-Hyun replied calmly. You only said I had to survive for 4 hours. I survived for 6. Minister Carvin consulted the ancient texts. His face was troubled. He is correct, Your Majesty. The rules only require survival. They do not specify method. 2 challenges passed. 1 remained. Queen Valera stood up slowly. Her golden eyes burned with something that might have been anger or might have been something else. The 3rd trial is called the Gift of Worth. You must present something of immeasurable value, something worthy of a princess. You have 1 day to prepare. Do-Yun bowed his head. I understand. As he walked back to his quarters, Yuna ran to meet him. She threw her arms around him, not caring who was watching. You did it! You passed 2 trials. 1 more to go, he said, holding her close. What will you give? What could possibly be valuable enough? Do-Yun was quiet for a moment. He had been thinking about this ever since he heard about the trials. He had one idea, but it would require help. A lot of help. I need to talk to Admiral Shin, he said, and Dr. Kang. I think I know what to do, but I cannot do it alone. That night, the lights in the station's medical bay and fabrication center stayed on until dawn. Something was being built, something that would change everything. Do-Yun worked through the entire night. He was not alone. Admiral Shin had gathered everyone who wanted to help. Dr. Kang Mirai, the station's chief medical officer, led the scientific team. A dozen engineers worked on the technical problems. Even some of the Keth who lived on the station offered their knowledge about their species' biology. The fabrication center glowed with activity. Machines hummed. Tools sparked. People ran back and forth carrying supplies and data tablets. Yuna was not allowed to enter. Do-Yun wanted the gift to be a surprise. She waited outside, pacing back and forth, her pale scales shifting colors with her emotions. What is he making? She asked Admiral Shin. Something remarkable, the Admiral replied with a tired smile. Your husband is a clever man. I think even your mother will be surprised. Inside the fabrication center, Do-Yun wiped sweat from his forehead. The device was almost complete. It was small, no larger than his palm, made of polished silver metal with tiny lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Are you sure this will work? He asked Dr. King. The doctor nodded. She was a serious woman with steady hands and kind eyes. We have run the simulations 100 times. The theory is sound, but we have never actually tested it on a living person. Will it hurt her? No, it is completely painless. She will not feel anything at all. Do-Yun held the device carefully. Everything depended on this small object. All his hopes, all his dreams, all his love for Yuna was concentrated in this little piece of metal. Then let us hope the simulations were correct, he said. Morning came too quickly. The whole station gathered in the main assembly hall for the final trial. Queen Valera sat on her temporary throne, her face unreadable. Her advisors stood behind her, whispering among themselves. They had expected the human to fail in the first trial. They were still trying to understand how he had made it this far. Do-Yun walked into the hall alone. He was clean and rested, wearing a simple dark suit that Admiral Shin had found for him. In his hand, he carried a small metal box. Yuna stood to the side, her hands pressed against her chest. She did not know what was in the box. She only knew that she had never loved anyone as much as she loved the man walking toward her mother. The 3rd trial, Queen Valera announced, is the Gift of Worth. The challenger must present something of immeasurable value, something worthy of a Keth princess. If the gift is judge-worthy, the challenger passes. If not, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Doyun stopped in front of the throne. He did not bow this time. He stood straight and looked the queen directly in the eyes. "Your Majesty," he said, "I have thought long and hard about what to give. I have no treasure. I have no precious metals or rare gems. I have nothing that would impress the wealthy houses of your empire." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Then you have already failed. Please, let me finish." Do-hyun opened the box. Inside, sitting on a bed of soft cloth, was the small silver device. "This is my gift." Minister Carven leaned forward to look. "What is it? Some kind of jewelry?" "It is a genetic stabilizer," Do-hyun explained, "designed specifically for Yuna." A murmur ran through the crowd. The queen's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. Dr. Kang stepped forward to explain. "As you know, Princess Yuna was born with unusual scale coloration. Among the Keth, this is considered a genetic defect. But human medical science approaches genetics differently. We do not try to fix people. We try to understand them." She activated a display screen. "We analyzed Princess Yuna's DNA thoroughly with her permission. We discovered that her condition is not a defect at all. It is simply a variation. Her genes are actually stronger than average in many ways. The pale scales are just a side effect of this variation." The queen leaned forward slightly. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that there is nothing wrong with your daughter," Do-hyun said firmly. "She is not broken. She does not need to be fixed. But I know that she has been worried about one thing her whole life. She has been afraid that if she ever had children, they might inherit her condition and face the same rejection she experienced." He held up the device. "This genetic stabilizer does not change Yuna. It protects her future children. It ensures that they will be healthy and strong, regardless of what color their scales turn out to be. If they are born with deep purple scales, they will be healthy. If they are born with pale violet scales like their mother, they will also be healthy. This device removes the anxiety. It removes the fear." Yuna had tears streaming down her face. She understood now. Do-hyun had not tried to change her. He had not tried to cure her. He had simply found a way to protect the future they might have together. "That is my gift," Do-hyun said to the queen. "Not gold, not gems. A promise that your daughter's children will never have to suffer the way she did. A promise that the next generation of your family will be loved exactly as they are." The assembly hall was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Queen Valera stared at the small device in Do-hyun's hand. Her golden eyes were unreadable. For a long moment, she did not react at all. Then she stood up slowly. "Do you expect me to believe," she said in a low voice, "that a simple human engineer created something in one night that Keth scientists could not develop in centuries?" "I did not create it alone," Do-hyun admitted. "Dr. Kang led the medical research. A dozen engineers helped build the device. Even some Keth citizens on this station contributed their knowledge. It was a team effort." "But the idea was his," Admiral Shin added. "Park Do-hyun came to us with the concept. He asked us to help him build something that would protect his wife's future, not fix her present. That perspective made all the difference." The queen looked at her daughter. Yuna was crying openly now, smiling through her tears. She looked happier than she had ever looked in her entire life. "Daughter," the queen said quietly, "come here." Yuna walked forward until she stood beside her husband. The queen looked at them both for a long moment. Then she reached out and took the silver device from Do-hyun's hand. She examined it carefully, turning it over in her long fingers. The tiny lights pulsed gently against her purple scales. "All my life," the queen said slowly, "I have judged worth by power, by strength, by bloodline. These are the things my empire values. These are the things I was taught to respect." She looked at Do-hyun. "You have no power. You have no great strength. Your bloodline means nothing to the Keth. And yet," she paused, "and yet you have shown me something I did not expect. You did not fight my champion with strength. You fought him with creativity. You did not beat my simulation with intelligence. You beat it with patience. And you did not try to impress me with wealth. You tried to protect my daughter's future." She held up the device so everyone could see it. "This is what humans value," she announced to the crowd. "Not power, not conquest, love, hope. the desire to make things better for the people they care about. She looked at Do-yun one final time. Your gift is accepted. The third trial is passed. The crowd erupted in cheers. After the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, Queen Valera made an unexpected request. She asked to speak with Do-hyun alone. Yuna was worried. Mother, what are you going to do? Nothing harmful, the queen replied. I simply wish to talk with my new son-in-law. Is that not allowed? Do-hyun squeezed Yuna's hand. It will be fine. Wait for me in our quarters. I will be there soon. They met on the observation deck, a quiet place where huge windows looked out at the endless stars. The queen's warship was visible in the distance, its dark hull glittering with running lights. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood side by side looking at the universe. I owe you an apology, the queen finally said. Do-hyun was surprised. He had not expected that. Your Majesty, I came here expecting to find a fool, a primitive creature who had tricked my daughter into a shameful marriage. Valera's voice was different now, softer, more tired. Instead, I found a man who loves her more than anything in the galaxy, a man who would risk his life for her, a man who sees her not as a defect to be corrected, but as a person to be cherished. She is easy to love, Do-hyun said quietly. Once you see past the surface, once you understand who she really is, loving her is the easiest thing in the world. The queen turned to look at him. In the starlight, her golden eyes seemed less cold. Do you know why Yuna's scales are pale? The doctors said it was a genetic variation, something in her DNA. That is true, but it is not the whole truth. Valera took a deep breath. The variation did not start with Yuna. It started with me. Do-hyun stared at her. I do not understand. When I was young, before I became queen, my scales were also pale. Not as pale as Yuna's, but pale enough to cause concern. My family used genetic masking technology to hide the truth. They changed my appearance, made my scales the proper royal purple. By the time I took the throne, no one remembered what I had really looked like. Why are you telling me this? Valera looked back at the stars. Because I want you to understand why I was so hard on my daughter. I know what it is like to be seen as defective. I know the shame. I know the fear. When Yuna was born with pale scales, I saw myself in her. All my hidden weaknesses, all my secret fears, written on her body for everyone to see. Her voice became heavy with old pain. I thought I was protecting her by being strict. I thought if I pushed her hard enough, she would become strong enough to survive in our world. Instead, I only made her feel more alone. She does not hate you, Do-hyun said gently. She loves you. She just wants you to love her back. I do love her. Valera's voice cracked slightly. I have always loved her. I just did not know how to show it properly. I was so focused on preparing her for a harsh universe that I forgot to give her the warmth she needed. They stood in silence for another long moment. Why did you accept the trial? Valera asked. You could have died. You knew the odds were against you. Why did you risk everything? Do-hyun thought about the question. My grandmother used to say that love is not something you feel. It is something you do. When Yuna was going to be taken away from me, I had a choice. I could accept it and let her go. Or I could fight with everything I had. He smiled slightly. I am not a warrior. I am not a genius. But I am stubborn. Humans are stubborn. When we love something, we do not let go easily. We hold on even when it hurts. We fight even when we are afraid. We hope even when hope seems foolish. Valera nodded slowly. I have ruled my empire for 200 years. I have seen thousands of species across hundreds of worlds. I have always thought that power was the most important thing. The strong survive, the weak are forgotten. She looked at Do-hyun with new respect. But you have shown me that there is another kind of strength. The strength to love without reservation. The strength to sacrifice without expecting anything in return. The strength to see the best in people when everyone else sees only flaws. She reached into her gown and pulled out a small medallion. It was made of black crystal, the same material as her crown. This is the seal of the royal house. It marks the bearer as a member of the ruling family. I want you to have it. Do-hyun's eyes went wide. Your Majesty, I cannot. You can, and you will. Valera pressed the medallion into his hand. From this day forward, you are Park Do-hyun, Prince Consort of the Keth Empire, the first human to ever hold a noble title among my people. I do not need titles, Do-hyun protested. I just need Yuna. I know. That is why you deserve the title. Valera smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. Take care of my daughter, human. Take care of her the way she deserves to be cared for. Show her every day that she is loved. That is all I ask. I will, Do-hyun promised. I will spend the rest of my life making her happy. The queen turned to leave. But at the doorway, she paused and looked back one more time. There is one more thing you should know. Yes? The genetic stabilizer you created. I had my scientists examine it. They say it is the most elegant piece of medical engineering they have ever seen. They want to study it, understand it, maybe use the principles to help other families in our empire. She paused. In trying to protect my daughter's children, you may have helped thousands of Keth families. Children who would have been rejected for their differences will now have a chance at normal lives. You did more than win a contest. You changed the future of my people. Do-hyun did not know what to say. Valera's smile grew wider. Maybe humans are not so unremarkable after all. She left without another word. Her warship departed that afternoon, returning to the heart of the Keth Empire. But before it jumped to light speed, the queen sent one final message to her daughter. Be happy, my child. Be loved. Be yourself. And bring your husband to visit soon. I want to know him better. Yuna cried when she read the message. They were happy tears. 3 years later, Yuna gave birth to twin daughters. One had deep purple scales that shone like precious gems. The other had pale violet scales that sparkled like frost in the morning light. Both were declared perfect. Do-hyun held his daughters for the first time in the station's medical bay. Yuna lay beside him, tired but glowing with joy. Through the window, they could see the stars stretching out forever. What should we name them? Yuna asked. Do-hyun looked at his children, at his wife, at the universe that had brought them all together. The purple one we will name after your mother, Valera II. And the violet one? Do-hyun smiled. We will name her Hana. It means flower in my language, because she reminds me of a flower blooming in snow. Beautiful, unexpected, perfect. Yuna kissed his cheek. Valera and Hana, they are good names. Outside, the stars kept burning. The universe kept turning, and somewhere in that vast infinity, a simple human and an alien princess had proven that love was stronger than prejudice, stronger than tradition, stronger than all the power in the galaxy. Because in the end, it was not about what species you were born into. It was not about the color of your scales or the planet you came from. It was about the choices you made and the people you chose to love. And that, more than anything else, was what made humanity special. That was the story that spread across the stars. The story of a maintenance engineer and a princess. The story that proved that even the smallest person could change the galaxy. The story of Park Do-hyun, the human nobody who became something more. The end.